Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Monday Mentor. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and create empowered teams. And today, I am so excited to have my guest this way over here, Lesley Woods. Lesley is a communications leader. She has served on the front line all over the world as a Royal Officer in the Royal Air Force, and now she is in the Royal Air Force Reserve. And she is a speaker and a communications professional helping people tell their stories. And she has some amazing wisdom and excitement to share with us today. And so I would like to welcome you, Lesley. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's a privilege.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. So one of the things that I always love for leaders to share is their story, because I think and I think you as a storyteller believe this too, we learn something when we tell stories. So tell us a little bit about how you got where you are. 20 years telling stories and communications in the military feels like there's a story there.
So I'm actually third generation women to serve in the UK Armed Forces. So back in the 1940s, World War II, my gran was driving ambulances around. She wasn't with the Queen in the same team, but in that kind of same job that Her Majesty the Queen did. She met my granddad in the British Army. They got married, had babies, lived the dream. My mum decided that she was going to join the Royal Air Force, or the Women's Royal Air Force, in the 1960s. She met my dad in the Royal Air Force, had babies. I'm here. I'm not going to do the same because I haven't actually had babies. But it's kind of sort of led me to the point where when you grow up and you've got uniform in the house, and I was always putting my dad's hat on because both my parents were in the Air Force at one time. And my mum tells the story that when she first sort of sat me in the corner as a little child and I was starting to learn to talk, that my first word wasn't mummy, daddy, food, whatever. It was actually why. So I think she was kind of like, oh my God, this child's going to be a bit difficult. So I was always like, why? So of course, Simon Sinek's work of find your why. I'm like, I've got it. I had it aged 1. It's all fine.
Oh, check. I love that. I love the heritage that you have of women in what is traditionally thought of as a male-dominated environment. I have a lot of people in my audience who work in finance. They work in other construction and other male-dominated fields. And you have a heritage that helps you kind of deal with that. What have you learned as a woman in that type of field that you can share with us a little bit?
So I think I went through all the sort of the family photos and sort of like the albums of my parents who'd served. And my mum in 1972 was chosen as the poster girl for a recruiting poster for the RAF dentistry, because she was proper glamorous. She was a model at the time. And so she's got all these kind of sort of beautiful film star type pictures where she's very feminine energy, little white nurse's dress, absolutely gorgeous. I almost went too far the other way. I inherited a lot of sort of character traits from my dad, and I run around in the green uniform, so very masculine. I have short hair, almost like trying to fit into what I thought needed to be the male role to be seen as a good leader. And I think over the years, I've actually gone back somewhere into the middle. If mum was incredibly girly and dad was like very masculine, I've tried to find a happy balance in the middle, because you should be yourself. And I think I've learned that over 20 years, that if you try and fit the mold, especially going through leadership training at RAF College Cranwell, if you try and fit the mold, you'll end up being something that you're not, and you can't sustain that in leadership. You can't sustain that throughout your career. You might pass the tests, but you won't get the job.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I help women in particular do is learn what is that is me, what is my expression, because that is the thing that is sustainable. You will burn out if you try to be somebody else or try to fit something specific. And often it's our idea of what needs to happen. It's not actually even what people are asking of us. We are just making those assumptions. So finding that who you are is such a valuable leadership skill, because then you start to recognize where your groove is, where you need support, where you really shine, and how you want to show up in the world which is sustainability. Like that is sustainable leadership. So good. So I'm going to come back to the why question. Ryan is saying, never hesitate to ask why. So when people come to you as a communications professional and they're like, I just want to get my message out, why do you tell them about stories? Like, how do you help them share that kind of vital communication, and why is a story important?
Because I think if you want to get something across, we've been telling stories since man began, drawing cave, things like that. So if you want to emotionally engage somebody, tell them a story. They get a measure of who you are. And I think people buy people. They don't buy press releases or stories or web blogs or whatever your CEO is telling you to write out. And I've actually spent a lot of my career, as we call it, speaking truth to power, saying, no, sir, you really don't want that. Oh, I want to be in the Daily Telegraph, Lesley, because that's what all middle-aged white men read. No, you really don't, sir. If you want to connect with young people who might join the military, you need to be in the Daily Mail or on Facebook or something else. And so, what is the story behind what you're trying to tell me? And they don't always get it. But I think the younger generation that I'm now training coming through are absolutely all over it like a rush, because they've grown up with social media channels that I never had. I mean, at 46, I never had, I didn't have a proper mobile phone when I was a kid. You've now got, you can, they're I want to be an influencer on TikTok. I'm like, I didn't even know what that was. It's like, so they come through intrinsically knowing how to tell stories. I think it's sort of my generation and that one that came before me that are a little bit more set in their ways, and that can be difficult to get past.
You said so many good things. I kind of want to pull out that I hope people got. And one of them is why we engage people emotionally. So a story engages people emotionally. I would love to hear you talk about why that's important in communication.
So I think if you can find your why, then you become a credible thing to sell to somebody else. If you're trying to sell a story, or in my case, I'm trying to propose the reputation of the Royal Air Force and that it's a great place to join as a career. But rather than just say, hey, it's really good, I'm better off telling you how I found my why in the Royal Air Force. And if I may, really quick story. I found my why. In 2010, I was sent to Kandahar Airfield in Afghanistan to do Christmas on my own. There was no photographer, no videographer, just me. I had a little rucksack filled with tints and Santa hats. And the boss was like, so right, you're only going for 2 weeks, just go over Christmas. And when I got there and I was like, yay, Christmas, nobody wanted to play. They were all, no, bar humbug, we're stuck out here, families are at home. I was like, a little video camera, please help me, I need to film Christmas messages for British media. Nobody wanted to know. I finally found a couple of people who were kind of sort of willing-ish, and I videoed them and I put the hats on and I put it on social media and I sent it back to the UK, and it went out on TV overnight. The next morning I went to my little media tent and I had a queue of people outside my door, and I'm like, it's a bit weird. Normally I have to go and find willing volunteers, but they're all queuing up. And apparently overnight, all of the wives and sisters and girlfriends and brothers and kids had seen these two stories from our units, busy bashing out like, why aren't you on telly? Why can't I see your picture on Facebook? So they all got told by their families to come along and see the media officer. So right there was my why. This is why I can help people, because I'm connecting people across the world with the story of deployed husband, missing kids. I'm adding value. Yes, I was away from my own family, but actually it was worth it. So I think just finding that personal why for me, and then realizing that actually I don't have to convince people to tell me a story if I can find another way around it. If that makes sense.
That's so good. And I love the social pressure of, I want to see your face. Like, it's such a great motivator. And I think, not everybody is going to do Christmas in Kandahar, but we do often have to convince our team or persuade our team of something. We have to help. There is a new initiative or a new goal or a new client or something that, like, what are we doing here? What is the value of this? And I think that story is where we can get people. Like, here is what we're trying to capture. Because one of the fallacies often in leadership is I need to tell them what. Yeah. And I need to give them the reasons. And we think that's the why. And that engages our logical brain, which is part of it. And then we also tell them, here's what we're going to do, because people want to know what they're going to do, which is also important. And we neglect this heart why, this imaginative, creative vision that connects with our emotions. And when all three of those work together, which is what a story does, then we help people see the purpose in a way that isn't just so you get a paycheck and the client's happy. Like there is something that we're doing, just like you said, which I would love for you to repeat. Your why is to connect people. So that helps you in what you're doing. And when we're helping our team see something, that story is so, so powerful. Ryan is saying, he's kind of asking a question, saying something. Stories now seem to be in these smarter, maybe not smarter, shorter is the word, possibly these shorter bursts. So how are you helping capture people's attention when we've all heard these statistics about how short our attention span is? How are you combating that in your communication?
So that's a really good point. And I think certainly the stepchildren that I've now got, sort of 11 and 16, their attention span is tidgy. So I look for powerful images. So all of my story's not a story without a picture. You need a really strong picture. You need a really strong hook. And I think if you can look for a unique angle, so even if it's, you have to work really hard. Some of the British media will only take one photo and like 50 words. And 50 words isn't very much. You certainly can't send them a press release. So your caption is basically your entire story is in that photo caption. Here's a woman in operations. She's doing an amazing job. She's the first of her kind. Here's how you can hear more about her. Here's some more pictures of her. Here's a picture of her dog at home, whatever it is. But, you're just looking for that instant connection. And if people are interested, they'll go on the blog, they'll go on the website and they'll read more. But I think you need to find a unique hook and you need to find a really good picture. Yeah. I get sent loads of stories. I've got a story idea. Where's the pictures? Yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
Well, that's really great to know. And I think sometimes, when you're sitting with your team on a Zoom meeting, or like, can I pull up an image? Yeah, you can pull up an image. But if you don't have that image, paint the story. Give us the five senses. So imagine this smell, this taste, this vision, paint the story if you can't get that image. But an image really does help bring people in. Okay, so we're going to do a little British to American translation. When you're talking about short attention spans of your preteen and teenager, what, titchy? What,
titchy. Yeah.
Just a little smidge of attention.
Little smidge, yeah.
Yes. I have a 12 and 16-year-old, so I feel you. So one of the things about stories is that I love the image, it connects us emotionally, but it also, what do you tell your people when you're talking to your leaders about stories being memorable? Talk to us a little bit about why story helps keep the message longer than just the features and benefits page.
So I think if you can find something that appeals to, it's all about your target audience, really. I mean, what I've learned over the years is it's better to go for less and sort of go deeper than to try and sort of scattergun effect, like a, breadth versus depth. So the amount of stories that I have tried to put out over the years in, say, national or international media, working with NATO partners such as your good selves, and, it's kind of scattergun. You get like tiny little stories that dissipate like pebbles on the ripples on a pond. What you really want is one or two really, really juicy where you can literally keep mining the story. And they actually take the mick out of me at work and say that I wring the sponge, literally until every last story drop is out. I was very lucky in that I found a story in Afghanistan of the first ever female fast jet crew. So a pilot and a navigator just happened to be women. The pilot was a show jumper. She came back to the UK in her uniform with her wings on her chest. And she jumped at Olympia horse trials here in London. And, so I was able to sort of follow her from flying fast jets in Afghanistan all the way back to London, jumping horses. So I had everything from Horse and Hound magazine to, Sport Monthly. And I was like, ring the story. Then I found out that her navigator had a sister who worked on a national newspaper magazine, glossy magazine. And she'd had an incident in the laundry where, obviously, Kandahar, we used to get accidentally rocketed. She'd had an incident in the laundry where the rocket had landed and she'd lost all her underwear. And she told me the story of, I've got no pants, the Taliban blew up my pants. I was like, great story, thank you, memorable. So that one story of two women in a fast jet, and I was going, and I was literally running it for weeks. It was great.
I love that. I love it so much. And I think one of the things that I feel like we hesitate to tell the same story again is because we're like, oh, we all think that everybody's the 12-year-old who's like, you've told me this before, mom. But adults aren't really like that. And repetition is a mercy. Like remembering the story or using the story to share a different point can be really powerful in communicating our message. And one of my friends and my speaker coach is named Sally, and Sally and I were talking about the power of stories because I believe that stories are the artifacts of our culture. So the stories that we tell over and over again and why we tell them help define what our culture is, what the messages are, and how we're leading people. Do we want to be a collaborative space, a creative space? Do we want to be an erudite space, a scientific, like what do we want to be? That's in the story, not in the posters on the wall. Okay, so in the interest of telling a good story, I know that this isn't necessarily about leadership, but I am dying to hear the story about how you climbed a tree for Tom Cruise in a movie. Tell us this story.
I didn't actually star in the movie, but I did climb the tree for Tom Cruise. So in my job, I look after, it's not as glamorous as the chap that works in the Pentagon, who is the Hollywood liaison officer. I would love that job one day. So in my job in the Ministry of Defence, I look after film and TV partnerships. So we worked with James Bond, we worked with Disney on Captain Marvel. And several years ago, I think it was 2015, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which if you've ever seen it, the opening sequence is Tom is hanging off the side of a very large military plane, one of ours. And so he filmed for a week at a Royal Air Force base. And I was absolutely in awe. He went up and up. He went up to 1,000 feet with just a harness on. It was him. There was no green screen, no stunt guy. It was him. And he went up and up and up several times a day until he was happy. And the shots, I think, were only like the first 5 minutes of the film. He spent a week filming 5 minutes. And, his dedication is kind of like just watching him was really quite cool. Problem was, this Air Force base is on the side of a very busy motorway in the sort of centre of England. And national media knew he was filming. So they're coming with their massive lenses and they're trying to find pictures of him. So I had to go around the edge of the base, shimmy up the trees and do like my... Right, perspective. Where do I think is this tree dodgy? We can't cut it down. What can we do? We put like barrier tape up around them so that if the photographer climbed the tree, he wouldn't be able to get the shot. So that was my job for a week. It was quite glamorous, but he was very grateful. I got a hug at the end of it, and he'd actually got a sort of coffee and hot, because it was winter. He got a coffee and hot chocolate machine onto camp, which was meant to be for the troops. So we had lots of hot drinks all day because it was cold. But at the end of it, and they said, do you want to meet the team that's helped you film? And he's like, I was like, my God, it's Tom Cruise. I can't touch it. And and they were like, Lesley was like, instrumental in keeping your story, if you're filming safe, keeping his story safe. So I'm being a custodian of his story. And I was like, hi. And he was like, and I was like, So Tom Cruise hugged me and I probably didn't wash for a week. But I protected his story. And that was the whole idea, because when it comes out in the film, you want to see that, oh my God, this is amazing. And it was amazing to watch it because it's not a stunt and it's not a green screen. It's really him. And it would have been such a shame if some sneaky photographer had spoilt it by just, getting that shot from the tree. So it was an important job.
I'm kind of speechless how much I love that. Like I kind of have goosebumps. And here's why, because being a custodian of a story is a powerful job. It is a powerful job. And that is who we are in our own lives, but also as leaders, being a custodian of our stories. And so, oh my goodness. So again, I can't believe what time it is. Because we've been talking for 20 minutes. I'm so glad that you were here today. And I'm so grateful for just sharing with us the power of a story, especially that ringing out of a story and over again, and like revisiting that. I think as a leader, that is something we can really take away, and being the custodian of a story, like that's just so powerful. And I appreciate that so much. So I am sure everybody's going to want to follow along, not just to hear more of your British accent, but all of your other great stories. So tell the people where they can find you and what you can do for them, and share with us the places.
So I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. It's one of those sort of places where you get great stories and you can connect and you can comment. So please do find me on LinkedIn. I have also got my own website, but I tend to sort of forward post to my LinkedIn, so lesleywoods.com. But I'm really happy just to connect and chat. I do a lot of sort of free 30-minute kind of I think you guys call them informational meetings. I just like 30-minute chats. I like to give back. I've had people give back to me in my career. And actually, if somebody's just starting out and wants a bit of a helping hand, I'll just do a 30-minute sort of coffee chat. So if you like one, then please drop me a message.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for your time. And I hope that you can get off to your supper this evening. I'm going to go eat some lunch because that's where it is here. And I appreciate just everything that you've offered us today. You have served us well as a Monday mentor. So thank you so much. I will see you all not next week because it is actually our Independence Day from the fantastic. It's Happy Treason Day.
Happy Independence Day for the British. Yes, sorry about that. Yeah.
It's all right. On Monday, so I won't be here, but the Monday after that, back with Monday Mentor. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Take care.